Welcome and thank you very much for joining us for our first ever Rocks and Stocks News online conference. There's been a trend due to COVID over the last 6 months to a year almost, where the old conferences that would happen in person have moved online. In my last 25 years plus years in the business, I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of live conferences. I've been a speaker at those conferences, and I've done a lot of online shows as well. And comparing this, what we're doing, to these other conferences, what I've always found lacking is that those conferences seem to be a lot about geologists trying to impress other geologists without really keeping in mind that this is about investors investing in mining companies. And so I wanted to sort of change things somewhat in that in this conference, what we're going to do is we're really trying to make it investor focused. And so what we'll do is a lot of the executives that I'm going to talk to, they're also investors. And I believe that they have a lot to offer investors as to what to focus on. So part of their segment is going to start with, let's say, some help for investors. And they have some specific knowledge that will help you as an investor. And so we'll start each piece with that. The next thing that you'll see in each of the segments is a value proposition. That's where I wrap it up at the end. After we've talked to the executives about what they're doing to unlock shareholder value, I'm going to then put it into context, wear my analyst's hat, and talk to you about their value propositions. Also, I want to let you know that for in the description below, not only will we have this full-length interview or show where you can watch all of the presentations, we'll also have them broken down into individual companies as well. So whether you want to share the entire show or individual segments, you'll be able to do that on this page. Without further ado, let's get on. I'm going to pass it over to Kelly Malcolm. We're going to talk to Kelly Malcolm from Amex Exploration about what they're working on. Kelly Malcolm. Kelly's the VP Exploration for Amex Exploration. Amex is a company that I started following on their earliest drill holes at their discovery at Perron. And what impressed me then continues to impress me now. It's the high-grade gold that they keep on finding, and we've got a lot to talk about. Kelly, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Alan. Appreciate it, as always. It's always fun, man.
Hey, well, you got lots to talk about. That's why it's so much fun, Kelly.
100%.
Okay.
So we got lots of new stuff coming out, but I'll let you lead the way, and lots of exciting stuff on the horizon for Amex.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the new stuff. We'll get into what you found, but all of these segments of the conference, what I'm trying to be mindful of, Kelly, is that not only are you an executive of a public company, you're also an investor. And I'm trying to make this show really investor centric. And so I believe that you executives that I'm having on have a lot to contribute to individual investors. And the topic that I wanted to talk to you about is it ties into your discovery. And what has really impressed me as the last couple of years have gone along with your discovery is the continuity of the high-grade gold mineralization, because that's ultimately what's going to make a mine. And so why don't you put your investor hat on a little bit and tell us, why high-grade continuity is so important?
Sure. So I'm going to put two hats on for you. I'll put the geologist hat on and my investor hat. So in terms of mining, classically, in sort of the last 100 or so years of Canadian mining history, people looked for consistent sheets of mineralization that they could get in, get underground, get the pickaxe out as equipment got better, and develop drifts, develop ramps, and exploit narrow, high-grade mineralization. That model has not changed. The only difference that's been employed is that since the development of the detour lakes, the Malartics, people are now looking at low-grade bulk tonnage type systems as valid and valuable, and clearly they are economic sources of gold. But that high-grade vein type system with good continuity, easily mined, is always going to be a very valuable style of gold deposit. It worked when gold was sub $300, and believe me, it works when it's at the current levels that it's at. So that's a bit of why it's so important to us, both from geological and from an investor perspective. You can generate significant value out of the ground with a consistent, continuous, high-grade body of mineralization.
Well,
That's very valuable.
sorry, Kelly, a lot of that has to do with profit margins. But you guys have done a really good job of presenting what you have found and how to visualize that in the continuity. And, you know, to put it into investor speak, what that really comes down to, it's connecting the dots of, in your model, you'll see, if you go to Kelly's website at amexexploration.com, you'll see that they have a lot of pink dots, which represent the highest grades. And really what you're trying to do in that model is to connect those dots into one continuous zone. And that's what makes these high grade, high margin kind of projects. Am I getting that correct, Kelly?
That's what we've been trying to get across since inception. Yes, you've definitely nailed that part of it. Something that's not totally unique to Amex, but it's out of the exploration stories in the space right now. We certainly are one of the more continuous high grade systems that I've been following. We're actually doing an academic study right now with a professor out of UQAC, which is University Quebec Chicoutimi, literally working on understanding how the gold deposit or gold system was formed in such a continuous high grade manner. Because a lot of times when you have these high grade gold deposits, you'll get your body of mineralization, and then you get high grade shoots running across these overall structures. And those are classically formed by something called ore remobilization. So you have a big lower grade system, and then you get an event that squirts this higher grade material into different panels of high grade rock. But the Perron project, and specifically the high grade zone, seems to be unique. It's more of an extensional type style of mineralization instead of the classical shear zone style mineralization. So it's different, it's exciting, it's new, at least to us, and we're working to understand how that formed, and important for investors, how we can find more of them elsewhere on the project.
And is that, I've kind of speculated on some of the conclusions that you might find in your report. Is that indicative, Kelly, of the power of the mineralization pumping the fluids up into your rock?
Yeah, there's definitely a very robust and strong hydrothermal system that injected itself into the Perron block, specifically what we call the Beaupré rhyolite block. In terms of the footprint of gold, like when you look from the western margin of Denise across to the eastern gold zone, and even then from some other work extending further to the east and to the west, it's a large hydrothermal system, multi-kilometer, now drilled down to over 1 kilometer depth. This is a real robust mineralizing system, and like you said, it's got some power, and clearly has a very high gold carrying capacity, which is very important for high grade systems.
Okay, so now let's talk a little more nitty gritty about the power of that system and what it's brought for you guys. To put it into simple terms, you've got that eastern zone, which is the high grade zone. You've got another zone, I believe it's to the west, or what direction is that other zone, Denise and those?
So Denise is to the west. What I can do is, I don't know if this will translate, but just for fun, um, no, I can't do it. I was going to try to sketch it, but you can go to our
Okay.
website. I can do it with my hand. So basically, we have the Huron Fault to the south, okay,
Yeah.
and we have the Eastern Gold Zone on the east, and then we have the Gray Cat Zone a little bit to the north, Denise, and then of the Eastern Gold Zone, it's comprised of the High Grade Zone, and then the Southern Denise Zone.
Okay, so in the high grade zone, that's where you've done most of your drilling. You've got this big zone of good continuity. Those other zones, you've found similar kind of grades, and then there's a gap zone in between all of that, right? So that's really where your focus until recently has been. Let's talk about that, Kelly, as far as what you found and where you're going with those zones.
Sure, we've currently got so in between those zones, we've got two drills dedicated to hopefully joining them up and linking them into a larger composite system. That's something that we've always thought warranted some significant exploration work. And then what's been really exciting here is we've always talked about the exploration potential on the project, Alan, and um, we've always been so excited by the high grade
You mean
zone
the
that
regional exploration potential
I mean
outside
regional
of
outside of this main core of those four zones. We've always been talking about getting out and doing some significant work. We get distracted by visible gold in what we already have, and we keep working on the known zones. But thankfully, around the fall of last year, we started doing a significant regional program. We've announced now two of what are shaping up to be possible significant discoveries outside of that main area. We announced drill hole PEX 21041 about 2.5 or 3 weeks now. That returned 31.8 grams over 5.1 meters. And the neat thing about that one is it was broadly, very well spread mineralization within that interval. And just recently we announced what we call the 210 zone, which is, it returned 58.2 grams over 3.9 meters, including a very, very high grade hit of 412 grams over half a meter. And the really exciting thing about this 210 zone and the PEX 2141 hits is that they are well outside of our expected and often talked about corridor of gold. So the 41 is further to the north, and this new zone 210 sits along a completely new structure along the northern Normatal fault on our maps. And the neat thing about that is it really opens up the property for significant additional discoveries, because most of our gold in the past was found along that southern Perron fault, and this is occurring on that
at the
northern.
southern margin of it, correct?
This 210 is occurring on the southern margin within that Beaupré block, but along the northern thrust fault.
Oh, wow.
So it's really neat. It opens up potentially a whole new corridor to the north. So we think it's really exciting news. That 210 in particular has there's a drill hole further to the east, drilled by one of the optioners in the past that returned gold basically on the same plane of 2.7 grams over 2.8 meters or so. And then also we've drilled visible gold in between those two along that same plane. So we're thinking that we're developing something significant here. Obviously needs a lot more drilling. It's only sort of 2.5 holes, but very, very excited about the prospect of developing additional discoveries that may have some economic potential.
Now, Kelly, are these all potentially related? I mean, from a stepping out perspective, they're quite significant step outs, but from a geological perspective, are they likely part of all the same gold mineralizing system? I mean, the grades look very similar to what you found at the main zone and the nearby zones, and now you've stepped out quite a bit and you're finding these new two zones. Does it look like it's all part of the same mineralizing system?
I would almost certainly, there's sort of two different systems of gold emplacement here. One of them is what you call volcanogenic style or primary gold mineralization that occurred during the formation of that volcanic belt. And the high grade zone, these newer discoveries all seem to share a very similar origin. And we've got something called the central polymetallic zone in the middle that is sort of the primary style of mineralization, as well as some other sniffs of VMS that look like there's something around, but we haven't yet found the big one. But we've definitely seen some really nice volcanogenic, I wouldn't say massive, but volcanogenic sulfide mineralization with some associated copper, lead, zinc, silver, and gold elsewhere, either historically or recently. Nothing to really write home about yet, but certainly we're on to something we think in the area for potential VMS, in addition to all this high grade gold.
So just to put it in a nutshell, you guys look like you have a very powerful mineralizing system that's bringing these hot fluids up. Those systems tend to go on for quite significant depths. For example, at Red Lake, they didn't even they had to get down below 1,000 meters to really start hitting the high grade stuff, the super high grade stuff, similar to what you guys are looking at. And I think they're well beyond 2,000 meters. Is this a similar kind of situation that they, not only do you have the strike extent, but the depth is wide open as well?
Absolutely. And what's neat, and I suggest that everyone that's watching takes a quick look at in our presentation, in our press releases, presentations, etc. We use a long section of the high grade zone, and what's neat about it is the high grade metal factor, which is basically grade times width, is increasing with depth. So the actual high grade core of the system up near surface, call it about 150 meters vertically. As we get deeper, it is getting larger and larger and larger. And that's something that we're very excited about. I know some other investors that have caught on to that are very excited about. I know you've always been excited about that, Alan. So it's pretty cool to see it come to fruition as we continue advancing.
Why I've always been mindful of that, and why I think investors should be mindful of that, is that, you know, in Red Lake, again, for an example, as you got deeper, that's where you got the higher grade, because you're closer to the heat engine that brought all that mineralization up there. And that's where you would get down to 2-3 ounces per ton kind of numbers consistently, that were jewelry boxes that were highly profitable. At one time, Goldcorp was one of the most profitable gold mining companies because of that Red Lake. So it's why I've been always mindful of it, Kelly. And I think it's really important for investors that, you know, looking at the various projects out there, if you look at continuity and valuation, I don't think there's any out there that can compare to Amex. I know I'm putting words in your mouth, but you can talk about the how these systems tend to get higher grade as you go deeper. But even where you are in the system, you're already in that super high grade stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'll put my investor hat on, and I always hear that commentary: the grade's going to get better, the widths are going to get better at depth. It doesn't always happen, or I would say often happen. Usually it's worthy of an eye roll, but it's neat to see that it is coming to life on this project, and we're very enthused that it seems that the rock that we're drilling as we get deeper is indeed becoming more valuable on a per ton basis, and that's something that we think is really exciting going forward.
Well, that's great to sort of put everything into context. Now let's look forward. What do you do before we wrap up? What are you doing now, Kelly? What do you got ahead of you? You got lots of cash, lots of drills. Give us a little idea of where things are going as we move forward?
So the major game plan here is resource definition. I would say about 70% of our 70 to 80% of our focus is on expansion and definition drilling of the Eastern Gold Zone, Grey Cat, and Gratien, with the major focus of that being on the Eastern Gold Zone, in particular defining that high grade core down to sort of greater than 750, 800 meters. Exploration is a major focus of ours as well. So one drill dedicated sort of to solely regional exploration, another drill dedicated to let's say like brownfield equivalent exploration, so testing around either known hits or following up on stuff, or testing along that Huron gold trend. I like we're having tons of fun. We're finding lots of gold. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, and we're all very excited as a company. We think we're onto something.
You guys
very
have
significant.
10 drill rigs running and
10
lots
drills
of guys
going. We've
flying?
got our geologists on staff are probably losing their hair by the minute, but it's a lot of fun for all of us. Like it's a really aggressive program that everyone's that it's involved with is happy to be a part of course.
Well, Kelly, can you do a little favor for me and maybe poke a couple holes down there about 1,000 to 1,500 meters? I got a feeling we might be doing cartwheels if you get down there.
Well, I'll keep that in mind, Alan.
Thank you very much, Kelly. You've been you've been a friend to the show, and I'm really thankful for the rocksandstocksnews.com website and the viewers for you guys being a sponsor of this show. So Kelly, have a great day and keep up the good work, my man.
You too, and keep doing your thing, Alan. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
All right, have a great day. Value proposition for Amex Exploration is quite impressive, actually. They've got a project, a discovery with exceptional high-grade continuity to their discovery, gold continuity. Not only do they have known zones, but recently they've also been doing regional exploration and finding additional zones. And what all this speaks of is the tremendous power of the gold mineralizing system that is under their ground. And if you go out there and compare, which I do, companies with high-grade continuity gold discoveries, if you bring into account their valuation, there really is nobody in the exploration business with what they have found in combination with their valuation. I think ultimately that this is going to be a takeover target by a much bigger mining company, and I think that takeover target will be multiples of what the current valuation is. So for those that want little less risk, exposure to gold, exposure to high-grade gold, Amex is for you. Tim Proud is the CEO of Sokoman Minerals. SIC is their stock symbol. SokomanMineralsCorp.com is their website. And Tim is, he's in Newfoundland. He's been there a long time. He's done a lot of work in the area. And Newfoundland has really become a sort of hotbed for exploration. So I wanted to start Tim's segment off talking a little bit about the region, what's got people excited about it, and how Sokoman fits into that. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Tim, to get on to that.
Great, Alan, to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, well, you know what? It's about time, really. And I've said this to a lot of people that, you know, the spotlight is finally in our backyard, and very deservedly so. You know, prior to 1980, competitive ground staking, you know, if you wanted to go out and stake a claim and, you know, prospect it yourself, was virtually impossible in most of Newfoundland. Newfoundland was divided up basically into 4 or 5 large blocks that were then issued to exploration rights were then issued to you know, to select companies. A lot of them were tied to the British Crown and stuff because of our, you know, in 1949 we were still, you know, Britain's colony. So, you know, really, 1980 was a turning point for us. That's when the Mining Act got rewritten. Prior to that, there were, again, competitive claim staking was virtually impossible. All of our mining history, which goes back to the 1800s, was for base metals or iron ore. So nobody really considered Newfoundland as a place to come look for gold. Even though all of our gold that was produced was from base metal mines. So there's gold in the system, but no one really came here looking for gold per se. That changed in 1980 when the Mining Act was rewritten and Hope Brook was discovered. And up until then, a base metal mine, Buckens, was our biggest gold producer. Produced 3/4 of a million ounces of gold and I think 65 million ounces of silver. Not bad for a lead zinc mine. So, we're really now where Timmins was in 1920. Basically, is how I term it, right? So, we've got a lot of catching up to do. We've got all the right ingredients here. We've got the big structures. We've got the favorable, government, who's mining friendly, and a bunch of people that love, beating around in the woods, sort of thing. And so from 35 known, so so from 35 or so known gold occurrences in 1980 to over 500 now, that says something, right? There's gold here to be found, and clearly a lot of it.
And there's a couple of companies that have sort of been making noise, and you have some experience on the ground with one of them. Marathon has their Valentine Lake, I think it's called, and then Newfound Gold has just burst onto the scene in the last 6 months or so. Sort of give us a overview of what's going on there, Tim.
Well, Valentine Lake is a clearly our in this province is the flagship sort of project. I mean, it'll be a mine probably in the next few years with over 4 million ounces. I have a little personal history with that project. I actually found the first gold that was ever found on that property. It's now, in fact, the discovery sample would be in what will be eventually the Leprechaun open pit at Marathon. So I have that piece actually on my mantle. So it's for us as Sockman, we're on the same structure, that very same structure that created or is responsible for the gold fluids, that brought Valentine Lake to what it is, rips right through our property, from top to bottom. It's 5 miles long on our property, and so in 2018.
You've only touched on a small portion of that structure. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly, Alan. Really, 2 kilometers has been basically where the work has been focused for obvious reasons. We're finding great gold, and of course in our pre-conversation, I mentioned we have like 25 targets to test on this property, from number 1 down to number 25. They're all high quality targets. They all either have corresponding geophysical, geochemical, an assay or 2 on them. And so now with Rig 2 about to join us next week, we hope, or very close to that, we'll now be able to generate news on potentially multiple discoveries, and I think that's really, what really gets people excited. Yes, I mean, people have obviously been, following us for the work we've done on our main zones, the east and the west trends, and now, of course, we find, right now we're focused. In fact, Rig 1 today is actually moved down onto a very recent development for us at South Pond, where we cut 5 meters of almost an ounce, including 2 meters of about 2 ounces, 25 meters below surface. It's amazing. So I mean, we just have so much to do here, and now that we've doubled our contract to 20,000 meters from 10, shareholders and interested people, even if they're not a shareholder, they may still want to be interested. Well, basically we're going to be a news story, for the next 6 months, and, I think that's what, people look for. You don't want to make news once a year or twice a year. You got to keep people, interested. And certainly with 2 rigs on the ground now, yeah, we're going to be.
You guys can go at it year round, right, Tim?
Yeah, well, we shut down for Christmas break, so otherwise we'd have people upset. But pretty much it's and I mentioned this to you also beforehand, Alan. The Trans Canada Highway, cross cuts our property. The assay lab and the drilling company's home base is an hour's drive west of here. We explore all in costs. This includes assaying, at about $150 a meter. Nowhere else in Canada can you do that.
You got to go down to Nevada and places like that to get those kind of low costs.
Oh, it's amazing. And our exploration dollars, get us roughly 2 to 3 times as much core, as say a company, drilling in northern BC sort of thing, because of logistics, right? Not that there's anything wrong with exploring in BC, but clearly, we have a cost advantage here.
Everything's helicopter supported in most of Canada. Your road access with the highway going right through it.
And as well, the property was logged in the past, so we're dealing with cutover, so we don't have to deal with issues with that. It's on Crown land. There are no issues with respect to protected areas or land claims or anything like that. It's logistically it's perfect. We just need to put a mine on it.
Now, Tim, I follow you guys closely and I comment on you guys quite a bit. And one of the things that I've been saying lately is that it won't, with the high grade gold you're finding, it won't take a lot to add up high grade, high margin ounces. And so really what I've said also is that I think it's only a matter of time before you guys figure out the system and then be able to add up target those high grade and high margin ounces much quicker. One of the things that, really excites me about this is you've talked about another big mine out there and the similarities. Let's get into talking about understanding your system and what it looks like.
Great question. And yes, the F word that you're talking about is Fosterville. And I've been fortunate. I've actually visited the Fosterville property a number of years ago before Kirkland Lake acquired it. So it was just an average run-of-the-mill mine. Averaging. I can't say what the grade was at that time, but I don't think it was 10 grams. Certainly not what it is today. So, obviously it takes time, even in a mine environment, to find out exactly what you have. So that's been part of the issue, I think, with Moosehead in the past, because there have been, drilling campaigns on this property in the past, but I don't think people understood the system. Another thing that I should mention as well is that there's no outcrop, right? So, you're basically you're drilling blind sort of thing. You don't have the advantage of a trench where you can see the veins and get their orientation and stuff like that. So that's always hindered, I think, people in the past. And clearly we've benefited from their previous work. I won't say they're mistakes, but because every hole is information, right? Whether there's gold in it or not. So we've learned from that, and clearly now, and with the defined model, that actually fits the property. These rocks are the same age as Fosterville.
Now let's get back to the
same structural history. The chemistry of the veins are almost identical. And I do believe someone who was very involved with Fosterville actually recommended a certain key investor in our company, our largest shareholder, by the way, that he should invest in this property based on what he sees. So
the investor you're talking about is Eric Sprott, sort of the Robin Hood of the business, and he's put a lot of money into a lot of good companies. And one of his biggest money makers was Kirkland Lake. And what made Kirkland Lake is the Fosterville mine. And why it made Kirkland Lake is because Fosterville is high grade, high margin, and you guys are in the right kind of geology, right kind of structural story. And that's what really gets me excited about what you're doing at Moosehead.
Well, the other thing too to keep in mind, Alan, is that as I mentioned, Fosterville was just an average gold mine, prior to discovery of the Swan Zone, which is basically, every geologist's dream, sort of thing. One of the highest, grade ore bodies on the planet, if not the highest grade. That's 1,200 meters down, right? We're getting grades not quite as high as Fosterville, but multi ounces, in a number of holes, at depths less than 100 meters vertically. So if you can open pit mine, a gold deposit that's got multi-ounce material in it. I mean, most open pits are what, a gram, 2 grams? We're talking 50 times as much gold. Now,
And
not that
still a cash flow money making machine. So you throw in 20 times that grade, and
now we still have to find a mine, right? So, disclaimer there, right? So, I mean, we have a lot of work to do yet, and, typically it's, hundreds, if not 1,000 drill holes, have to go into, defining, especially a structurally complex gold deposit, right? So, so that's what we're doing basically now is, years ago when a gold discovery was tested, a lot of times people would put one hole underneath the showing, and if they didn't get the results they wanted or thought they should get, they walked at best. They may have stuck another hole 100 meters off to the side, sort of thing, to see if it was over there. And no, right? These things need to be drilled off very tightly, on the tens of meter scale, right? Not hundreds of meters. So that's probably where I think a lot of people may have fallen down in the past on this project, was trying to get the big step out, like go for the home run sort of thing, when a guy on first base is going to score, before
you just got to get the second, third, and fourth, not
you move. Exactly, but you have to go around the bases, right, sort of thing. So
exactly.
but so that's what we're doing now. With rig 1 is focusing on tightly defined areas where we've gotten good results in the past. We started in fact we just moved to the South Pond area, where one of our more recent results was a spectacular 5 meters of about an ounce, including 2 meters of 2 ounces, 47 meters down the hole. So it won't take us long, to get a number of holes in there. So that's where we're going. And so rig 2, and that joins us next week. We're told the rig should be on site in next week sometime. Is going to focus on the other 25 targets that I was mentioning earlier. We have 5 miles of that structure to test, and basically 25% of that has only been tested to date. So it's time to.
You're infrastructure rich, you're target rich. The Truth Machine has been talking lately. Your recent news release was the headline was 4 meters of 24.92 grams, including 1.6 meters of 61 grams. That's not isolated. You've been doing this for a while now. So let's talk about pending news, and let's talk about the work you're doing to create more news, because that's all about news flow, and that's what gets investors excited.
Of course, the assay flow is totally out of our hands in terms of, the lab is, there's one lab here on the island. I mentioned it's an hour's drive west of us, so it's close, but they're also very busy because, pretty well everybody's using them except maybe 1 or 2 companies. And so we are at the mercy of that. So, it's still unless we rush everything. And of course that gets, cost prohibitive after a while. So, clearly when we drill a hole, Alan, and we see, things that gets us excited, clearly, that stuff gets rushed, so that stuff we can look at in under a month, right? Or maybe even a few weeks, if we're lucky. So next week, rig 2 joins us. It's going to start testing, those 25 other targets that we have outstanding, along that 8-kilometer structure we have. Rig 1 will be, basically, as I mentioned, focusing on expanding on areas of high grade, because as you mentioned correctly, you don't need a lot of tons to get a lot of ounces when you're dealing with multi-ounce material, right? So and very shallow. So so that's happening, and it's a 20,000 meter program now. Initially it was 10,000. Now we double that to 20. With the current treasury, that's well in hand. We have over $4 million in the bank right now, so we can easily drill 20,000 meters with still a little bit of gas in the tank, and hopefully by that time, we'll have enough results that interest the market to push the shares along the road, because we have a lot of paper out there, a lot of warrants that are at 20, 25 cents that we'll put several $1 million in our treasury. So we really don't need to finance if we can get access to those warrants. So that's something I dream about at night, is basically got to get those warrants exercised, right? And
So 30 cents or better, and probably a lot of that'll come in.
I would think so. Yes. Yeah. We did touch 30 just recently, but it was only for a day or so. I mean, normally people would like to see a little sustained, at that level before they do that. So, but yeah, so that's my goal, is to bring those warrants home and that cash, because there's no fees, there's no anything. That's money directly in our treasury, and that's hard dollars too, not flow through. That you're under a time gun to spend that, right? So, it's all very good.
Okay, well, I want to make one final point, and then I want to wrap it up. Not only is Sokoman infrastructure rich, they're target rich, the truth machine has been talking, but there's another important point, and I've always been a kind of guy that watches people. And when it comes to geologists, you want your geologist enthusiastic and excited about what he's doing, passionate about what he's doing. Tim is passionate about exploration in Newfoundland, and specifically on Sokoman. And I don't blame him. When you're looking for something that has the hallmarks of a Fosterville, that's what gets you excited to get out of bed every day. Is that correct, Tim?
Oh, absolutely. I was born to be a geologist, Alan, and and what a lot of people probably don't realize is that I was born 22 kilometers west of that property. I fished on it as a boy. I mean, it's amazing. It's like I said, as a geologist, and especially when you get a number of years under your belt, you've been a lot of places, right? But never have I been, this excited about a project in my own backyard, and have the opportunity, on weekends, to have a cup of tea with my mother, who's now in her 80s, and it's. It's yeah, and Newfoundland is a great place to explore. I mean, the government is pro mining. They want, they publicly stated they have a 5-year plan that they want 5 new mines in the next 5 years. So they're there to help us, and so plus, like you said, infrastructure rich. Yes, I mean, we have the perfect location for a mine. That's my job, is to find the mine, and clearly there's enough indications to suggest that there could be. Now, that's a loaded statement.
Well, that's not too loaded, because the truth machine and the geology is sort of pointing you in the right direction.
Well, you know what? We've crossed a couple of hurdles already. Like out of 1,000 properties, 900 of them don't get 5 drill holes. People walk away from them. So the fact that we're now collectively, between what we've drilled and historically, 200 drill holes suggests, we're getting close to, a point where, it's either this way or that way sort of thing, right? And but we still do have a lot of work to do. I mean, with these types of deposits, as I mentioned, they're very structurally complex. You need to drill them, respectfully, and I think that wasn't done in the past. So it's we still have some work to do, right? And
well, I hope that in the scheme of things, that one day you get to tip your tea glass to your mom and say, "Mom, I found a mine in our backyard," and that's a dream that I think the shareholders can pay attention to. And I wish you all the best in that endeavor, Tim. And I'm going to wrap things up now, but thank you for being a sponsor of this show. I think it's important for investors to be able to see the enthusiasm and hear from companies. So thank you very much for coming and sponsoring the show, Tim. The value proposition for Sokoman Minerals is that they are finding what looks like another Fosterville. And to find another Fosterville, which really made Kirkland Lake into Kirkland Lake, the famous company that they are now, those kind of targets don't come around very often. And they are looking for one of those. And not only are they looking for one of those, the drilling is what suggests that they're looking for one of those. They have hit a lot of high-grade gold, and I've said for a while now that when they figure out that system, it's not going to be difficult to add a lot of high-grade gold ounces. They're really getting a handle on this system and how it looks a lot like Fosterville. And, you know, if they find something like Fosterville, they'll be looking at a $500 million to $1 billion valuation before you know it. And they still got a very modest valuation when looking at that kind of potential. So take a look at Sokoman Minerals. Next, I'd like to welcome Chad Peters. Chad is the CEO and president of Ridgeline Minerals. RDG is their symbol on the Venture Exchange. And thanks for joining me today, Chad.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Alan.
Okay, so one of the themes that I wanted to talk to you about is the Nevada premium, I call it. And what we often find is companies that are in Nevada, compared to other jurisdictions, they can get a healthy premium relative to their peers. And I just wanted to, look at, I think you guys are a prime candidate for that Nevada premium. And I wanted to pick your brain as to why you think that happens.
No, for sure. Well, there's a lot of factors that definitely play into that Nevada premium, but it's a real thing for sure. I think it's a mix of, you look at Nevada's history, it's got really clean permitting, like once you get a mine into production, it's not getting pulled out of your hands, so it's very, very safe jurisdiction, simple, albeit a little bit time consuming permitting at times, but once it's in, it's in. And a really great, workforce, and, that are all like, I live in Winnemucca, probably half the people here work in the mines, right? So small town, so good workforce. And, on top of it, I think that you can put mines into production that in a lot of jurisdictions would never be, economic, right? You can't take what we've just discovered at Salina, pop it into the Yukon and say, okay, we got something that looks like it has legs. It'd be a total non-starter in the Yukon. In Nevada, it could be a huge moneymaker. So if we can continue showing it can grow. So I think that premium's real and gets applied to good stories.
I think it also has a lot to do with the low costs of exploration and development and production.
Sure.
Yeah, so chat a little bit about that, because
Yeah,
I think that really applies to what you're finding and the potential for economics down the road.
Absolutely. You're right. It's a good point. Like, an open pit, shallow mine in Nevada, I mean, they can move rock for $3 to $5 a ton, right? Like so you don't need $100 rock to make an exciting mine, right? Like, I mean, you find $25 rock, $50 rock, that can be a really high premium open pit operation. So very cheap. And like you said, too, the exploration is relatively cheap as well. And we can explore almost year round. I mean, we got a little bit of a slow period here, but I've had years where I've drilled year round and it hasn't been an issue. And then you get a heavy snow year and maybe it knocks you out for 2 months. But
yeah, so as you mentioned, you live down there in Nevada, and you come to this Nevada exploration with a pretty good pedigree. You spent a lot of years working with Ewan Downey, who I highly respect. I think of him as a mentor. And the reason I do is I think he's one of the most talented explorationists that I know. So you spent a lot of time with him. Talk a little bit about your experience in Nevada.
I got really lucky to join up with Ewan when he was looking for a summer student when they spun Premier Gold Mines out back in like 2006. And pretty much when I went and started working for him, I think I worked like almost 80 days straight, because I realized, okay, so you're just going to keep paying me if I keep working? And he said, sure. So I cut core and log core for about 80 days straight, took 5 days off and did it again. So, started out early with him and learned a ton from him and the team. So when I moved down to Nevada, kind of the whole company mandate was we felt that kind of our niche back in Canada was picking up underexplored assets and turning them around. I mean, Hard Rock, I think we acquired for $2 million, 2 or 3 million from Barrick. And now, you can see what it is now, right? So, and I got to be a part of the team there. So we just wanted to take that same approach, apply it to Nevada exploration. And that's kind of how I got my start in Nevada, really just coming down, not knowing a thing about Carlin type deposits and learning from some really good geologists down here, and have made some discoveries since. So it's been good.
You guys, you're kind of understating your finding. Talk a little bit about what you found down there.
Sure. Well, we found about probably about 10 million ounces in Canada over about a 7-year period, and then came down here to Nevada, and it took 2 or 3 years of grinding it out till we really kind of cracked open the Cove McCoy discovery. But that was originally, I think, about a 3 million ounce open pit, huge silver deposit as well. Got shut down by Newmont, actually, is the ones who put it through closure. And we picked it up off them for a song and reinterpreted the geology. And I think the most recent PEA was about 1.7 million ounces of over 10 grams.
So it's kind of indicative of your past, and you're trying to repeat that with your own company now. Tell us a little bit about your business plan, because I think that's very important to the current share structure and what you plan to do in the future to keep that share structure nice and tight and in good shape.
Sure. Well, that's one of the things I learned when working for you and the team, right? Was the best approach was to be a large shareholder and be able to kind of put your money forward into the company. So we started the company. I've put about 150 grand into it privately of my own cash between our 3 financings. We've kept the structure really tight by bringing in really good shareholders who supported the idea, more not folks that are looking for a quick buck, that believe in what we're trying to do. So we raised at progressively higher valuations, 12 cents, 22, 45. I think we're trading in around 50 today. So we're I think we're adding value, and the hope is just to continue. Whenever we do a raise, is making sure that we're showing a premium to our shareholders and that we're adding value per share if we're going to add more shares to the registry.
And you have some significant shareholders, in my opinion. Ewan Downey is one, and another mentor of mine is Andre Gaumond from Virginia Gold fame. Having those kind of guys backing you is quite a nice achievement for a relatively new company.
Well, we've been really lucky. Like for example, when we hooked up with EMX and spun the projects out, they invited us or introduced us to Dave Elliott and Paul Stevens. And then one of my other early shareholders, Mark Vodosevich at Avire, he introduced us to Andre Gaumond and those guys out of the Quebec side. So we've just been lucky to have some really great introductions and build those relationships from there. So it's a good, strong shareholder base for sure.
Well, it doesn't just take introductions; it also takes a compelling story.
Had to sell it a little bit, but yeah, no, they've been good shareholders.
Yeah, they're pretty talented at exploration and finding stuff.
Yeah, they've definitely done well for sure. So,
okay, so now to unlock shareholder value, it comes down to the projects in your case, and you recently did an interview with a Verify presentation where you were able to bring in the geology and all that sort of stuff. So I want to move on to that now, because I think I want to invite viewers of this show to go to your website. What's your website again?
RidgelineMinerals.com.
Go to the website and you'll find this presentation. Because I'm so excited about what they're doing, I spent a bunch of time watching the interview, and I provided some commentary and some questions. And so you'll find those on there as well. Some of the things that stood out to me was, let's start with the fault system. It's quite a significant fault system. And what you're finding is that the gold is kind of right at the faults. And really exciting is some of those cross sections of cross-cutting faults is where you're getting some really exciting mineralization. So tell our audience a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, as we've gotten more and more into the project, I initially I didn't love Salina when we first picked it up. I liked the shallow, high grade potential there, but I just wasn't seeing initially kind of the big scale that I wanted to see. And then Mike Harp joined us, my VPX, and he had a lot of experience growing the North Dark Star and Pinion discovery by Gold Standard Ventures. And that's a very similar kind of structural setting and all that. And he keyed on it, on it pretty quick. And that's when we started, really starting to pick up on these structural intersections as being the main conduits for the fluid flow. And yeah, like you get some of these fault intersections, you're getting multi-gram gold, kilogram per ton silver at surface, right at these fault intersections. And now we're starting to drill under them, and we're hitting in these prospective host rocks, anywhere from outcropping at surface down to even 200 meters depth. We're still getting that down dip continuity. So every time we hit a fault intersection, it appears to be a major blowout for the system. So I think that's how you really build the tons in the grade, is through those blowouts. And then there appears to be quite good continuity between those structural intersections as well.
So it's coming up through the faults and then spreading out into the limestones.
Yes, and it likes the footwall sides of the fault. So if you got a fault sitting right here, our bedding is actually dipping down into those faults, right? So those fault intersections are creating almost little anticlines. And then there's been reverse motion and lots of jostling on those faults. So what you end up with is this perfect little structural trap. So when when you get that structural trap with the right rocks adjacent to a fault, it's the perfect setup.
Yeah, and another thing that stood out to me in that presentation was that you had a map with Google Earth, and then you put over top of that the interpreted fault structures. And I often find old Google Earth there does a great job of showing you where everything is. It's not just some lines you're drawing on a map. You can actually see the faults and the surface expression, and that's got to be helpful.
Oh yeah, and picking up the data, like that was one of the things that was, before we went and we knew the sonic target, for example, up to the north. We liked that target right from the start, but we didn't want to drill it because we knew there was 20 odd holes nearby, right? And so we've been trying to get that data because we saw the faults were ripping right up into that zone. There was rock chips, there's, all the indicators something was going on, but we wanted to understand what had been drilled first before we went and put money on it. So picking up this data was really huge because, like Mike said in the presentation, it saved us probably about 1.5 years of actual on the ground work. And I mean, so we've invested $1 million Canadian into Selena so far, right from acquisition through discovery, $1 million Canadian. That's for 22 drill holes and everything, all the background work. We just acquired 51 drill holes, plus geophysics, plus soil sampling. So you start looking at the value of that data set. It's a few $1 million in our eyes, and 1.5 years of work saved. So it's a huge step forward for us.
Because it really helps you vector in on what you're looking for with solid data that you don't have to do yourself.
Yeah, it's already there. We can build on that data set now, really hone in on what we've realized is, back in the 1980s when these guys were drilling it, they were onto it. They were drilling the same structural intersections, same ideas as us. They just weren't drilling deep enough. So they were drilling, on average, just, the first, top 100 feet, 200 feet of the section. What they didn't, what they weren't able to see at the time was actually the whole system is dipping down, and they were kind of drilling that, just missing the down dip expression of it. So
excellent. So another thing that really stood out to me in that presentation was you talked about the fine grained nature of the gold and silver, and that you're using to date you've been using reverse circulation, and based on the low cost of mining in the area, you're getting handsome grades out of reverse circulation, which has the potential to lose some of the gold and silver in the fines. And one of your key plans is to get in there with core, which will give you much better recovery and recovery of the core, and also not lose those fines. So can you delve into that a little bit for us?
For sure. So, RC is a great tool in Nevada. It's cheap, it's quick, and it's really effective when you're above the water table. So in our case, we are above the water table, only in, I think, the deepest of holes we drilled about 300 vertical meters did we actually intersect a couple gallons per minute of water. So you're able to get pretty consistent values with RC, even in fine-grained mineralization. The problem is when you get right into a fault zone, right in the heart of a system, a lot of times a common feature of Carlin type systems is collapse brecciation. So you have the gold fluids come in, they essentially karst or cave in the rock itself because they remove a lot of that limestone material, which but I'm speaking to the speaking to the crowd. So when that caves in, and then you come in with a hammer, which is the RC rig, it's like throwing a grenade into a garbage can and hoping for the best. And so that's sometimes, in this case, we had one drill hole along one of the best, strongest mineralized faults we've drilled yet, happened to drill into one of those collapse breccias. And so if we go in with core, we should see almost 95 to 100% core recovery. Those fines, instead of getting knocked out of the RC chips, are going to stay in the core. You cut it really cleanly, and we shouldn't have any issues with recovery. So I think we've underreported those grades. We'll see if we're correct on that when we re-drill it. So
to test that theory of losing some, you're going to go in and do some holes core right near the reverse circ.
Yeah, we'll essentially twin that first hole, and then we'll drill beneath it as well. Try to prove the grade and the continuity are still there. And yeah, it should be. I mean, in my time at Cove, for example, it was well known that you'd see about a 15% reduction in grade drilling RC versus core. Mike's team did a similar case study at Pinson, Pinion, the Pinion deposit. And same thing, I think it was 18% on average, lower grades with the RC. So for the cost savings, if you have a good grade deposit, it's usually worthwhile to just sprinkle in core holes in and around in a representative fashion throughout your RC drilling. And usually that gives you a representative grade. But in our case, I think it could really open things up for us.
Well, we'll get into those other projects at a later date, but Chad, I really wanted to thank you on behalf of Rocks and Stocks News. You're a sponsor of the conference, and that makes this show possible. So on behalf of the viewers, I'd like to thank you as well for that sponsorship and your time to come on today to chat.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conference. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Okay, Chad. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon. Looking for more great stuff out of you guys.
We'll do our best. See you, Alan.
Thank you. So the value proposition for Ridgeline Minerals is a key one is that they're finding very good grades of silver, and they've got some great gold exploration projects. What makes them exceptional is the first discovery that they've made has a project where the costs of mining that will be sub $5 an ounce. So what they're finding is quite a bit more than that. Now, it's not super high grade, which is, if you weren't in such a great place with low costs for extracting the silver and gold out of the system, you wouldn't be able to develop this kind of project. But where they are, it's exceptional grade, and I think they're sitting on a very impressive project, and I think that they've got lots of other good stuff on the horizon for their other projects. And if you take into consideration that low cost, the grades that they're looking at, the valuation, I think they've got a lot of blue sky ahead of them for the valuation. So take a close look at Ridgeline Minerals. Hello, everybody. Got a new guest here in Aaron Stone. Aaron is the running things, part of the team at QCX Gold Corp. They're a new company that's sort of been off the blocks in the last several months. And what they're focused on is gold exploration in Quebec. They've got a good group of projects. And I wanted to just say hello and thank you for joining me today, Aaron.
Hi again, Alan. Nice to speak to you again. And yeah, thanks for spending the time with me again today.
No problem. So why don't we start out with gold? What do you see in the gold market, Aaron, and why do you like gold so much?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, gold is always one of the major metals to look for in the metals market, and we really think that here in Quebec, where both of our projects are focused, that although there's been a lot of past production gold-wise, especially in the Abitibi gold belt, there's really a renewed focus on gold in Quebec as well, especially up in the James Bay area. So we're excited to be up there as well.
Yeah, and Quebec is a real, not just a hotbed, but it's also one of the best jurisdictions in the world for mineral exploration and being friendly towards miners, and so um, that's got to play a role in why you're focused in Quebec.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Quebec government, a lot like other provinces in Canada as well, but specifically the Quebec government is really great exploration wise for offering tax incentives for exploration activities. And there's also a lot of funds out there that we can apply for small exploration companies such as ourselves. So, yeah, really good province to be located in.
So how does that play out? Unpack that a little bit. The friendliness towards exploration and also the funds that invest in Quebec, and all you mentioned the tax incentive. Let's get into a little bit of that.
Yeah, so there's a fund specifically actually at the moment for the expansion of exploration activities, especially in the James Bay region. The Quebec government is wanting to open up not only exploration activities, but just open up the north in general for all sorts of activities up in the north. So they're building new highways, new infrastructure, like getting electricity up there. So James Bay areas just keeps growing and growing. So there's a fund at the moment for small exploration companies as ourselves to fund exploration drilling in the James Bay area. So we're definitely in talks with the Quebec government at the moment in seeking those funds as well. Yeah, the tax incentives that we mentioned for spending those hard-earned dollars in the ground here in Quebec. A nice example that one of the members of our board likes to give, Kelly Malcolm. He's also the Vice President of Exploration over at Amex Exploration. They spent $6 million on exploration activities last year and got a check back at the end of the year from the Quebec government for 1.6 million. So certainly a lot of incentives to explore in Quebec.
So there's 6 million turned into about almost 8 million worth of drilling and money like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's a pretty good incentive. And so let's get into a little bit about your projects. You've got two key projects. They're in hot areas. Well, why did you go with those two out of the gate?
Yeah, so our first project that we picked up and where most of our focus is on at the moment, Golden Giant, is up in the James Bay area of Quebec. And the guys that set off the explosion of exploration activity in that specific area was Azimuth Exploration with their Pat 1 discovery on their Elmer project. So back in January of 2020, when they announced their first significant drill results at Elmer, we were pretty quick to act upon in getting some first packages of land surrounding them in our Eastern Block and Western Block. We then later expanded on our land package at Golden Giant with a deal we got done with Harfang Exploration that essentially doubled our West Block, doubled in size of our West Block and added the Cali East Block as well. So now we've got 3 blocks of claims up at Golden Giant. Our second project is the Fernet project further south in the northern Abbotsbury region. We've got 2 blocks of claims here, the Western and Eastern Block, and the major player in the area causing all the excitement in the area there is Wallbridge Mining with their Fenelon project. They also have the Martiniere deposit just south of our Western Block there as well. So, yeah, as you said, two very hot areas at the moment.
Now, you guys didn't just, sort of get in on an area play kind of stuff. There's geological reasoning behind that. Let's talk a little bit about the two projects and, the similarities, why you acquired them, and in what's going on around them. Yeah,
absolutely. So to start with Golden Giant, what attracted us originally, especially about the Eastern and Western blocks, was obviously the geological and geophysical similarities that those blocks were showing to Azimuth Exploration's Elmer project. So on the eastern block, which is directly south of Azimuth, we're seeing similar structures there with a northeast trending fault running through the block, and over on the western block, a northeast running shear zone as well. So the structures that we're finding on our properties at Golden Giant are following the general trend of deformation in the area, similar to what Azimuth is seeing on their Elmer property. Then down at Fernet, what it got us excited about the western block in particular was the intersection of northeast but also northwest trending faults. And the intersection of those two faults is what we're particularly interested in. And we've got numerous intersections on the western block that we'll be wanting to target with drilling eventually. And the reason that gets us so excited is because Wallbridge has had success in the area with targeting those fault intersections, not only at Fenelon, but also at Martinaise. So we're, definitely excited about both projects.
For the non-geologist that's watching the show, I'm hopeful that most of our audience is investors. Talk a little bit about why those faults on both your projects are so important for gold mineralization.
Yeah, so I'll start with Golden Giant. So the thing that is controlling the gold mineralization on Azimuth's property at Elmer, just north of our Golden Giant eastern block, is the main trend of deformation in the area is trending to the northeast. So they've got two sets of faults which are controlling mineralization at Elmer. So the first set being northeast trending faults, which follows a general trend of deformation in the area. And the second lot being perpendicular to that first set, being northwest, southeast trending faults, and they're extensional faults. So, sorry, I meant to say extensional veins. So the two sets of veins that Azimuth is seen on their property are well endowed with gold mineralization, visible gold in those quartz veins, and then they're also seeing disseminations of gold seeping into the host rock as well. So this is why they've been able to get such thick sequences of over 100 meter sequences of over 3 grams per ton gold. So what we're getting particularly excited about on the western block is that our highest grade grab sample from our summer exploration work last year returned up to 18.9 grams per ton gold, and this was from came from out of the host rock being a sheared amphibolite, so not even out of quartz veining. So what's exciting about that is we're not having to rely on quartz veining in the area, and that we're finding gold values in the host rock, which could be a good indication that we have something similar on our hands to what Azimuth is seeing on their Elmer project.
So those faults, for the non-geo out there, our investors, those work as sort of the conduits that bring the hot fluids from deeper that are mineralized to close to the surface. And obviously at surface, because you're sampling and finding it.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, so let's touch a little bit about on the specific, you started a bit on the specific work you've done on the projects, and then we'll get into the upcoming work. So let's start with, a little bit about what has excited you on the initial exploration and on the for both projects.
Yeah, so our summer exploration work that we got done last year, and I will say we were pretty happy with the amount of work that we were able to get done last year, especially considering we've only picked up both sets of claims at Golden Giant and at Fernet last year. So we're happy with the amount of work we've been able to get so far. So our geological consulting group, Laurentia Exploration, they completed a summer exploration program up at Golden Giant in 2 phases of work, both on the eastern block and the western block. So they did obviously geological mapping, grab sampling and trenching. So from the phase 1 program highlights from the Eastern Block went up to 1.71 grams per ton gold, and on the Western Block 3.87. Then when the guys went back for the phase 2 program, obviously went back to these areas with results to refocus on them, as well as a few other areas of interest. And then from the phase 2 program, highlights from the Eastern Block included up to 4.6 grams per ton gold, and the Western Block 18.9 grams per ton. So the Eastern and Western Block are two real different games at the moment. So what we're seeing on the Eastern Block, and which is what's starting to look so great, is that we're getting gold values spread across the entire property. So we're not seeing gold values constrained to just one specific geological unit or constrained to quartz vein or anything like that. The values are coming out of basalts, gabbros, tuffs, even semi-detached boulders close to rivers, and some minor values in the cherty layers of an iron formation that is found on the western portion of the Eastern Block that folds around. So yeah, really exciting in that fact that we're not having to rely on just one geological package, and we're seeing real typical mineralization found in grab samples in quartz veining, with other minerals like tourmaline, and then sulfides such as pyrite and chalcopyrite. Then over on the Western Block, as I was kind of hinting at before, we're getting values coming out of the host rock. We're not even having to rely on quartz veining in the area here. It's a bit more of a focused area over a strike length of about 500 meters, where our strike length with gold values on the Eastern Block is well over 5 kilometers. But in saying that, obviously 500 meters is still a decent strike length, and we're getting values of close to 19 grams a ton, as I said, coming out of the host rock being a sheared amphibolite with disseminations of around 5 to 10% pyrite. So yeah, obviously very excited to get back into the Western Block as well, seeing we've only explored a certain portion of the Western Block, seen at such a grand size. So yeah, really exciting results so far, and we'll certainly be doing an inaugural drilling program in the couple of months, and then follow up with additional summer exploration work this year as well.
So you're in a good area, you've got the right kind of conduits with the faulting, and you've got widespread gold mineralization, which gives you a pretty excellent drill target. And that's why you guys are getting ready to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment we're running two geophysics programs. So we've just finished a airborne magnetic survey at all 3 blocks at Golden Giant, and we also captured the Western Block at Fernet as well. So we should have the results for that back early next week, with final reports over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're also just about to begin a IP geophysics program on the ground at Golden Giant as well, focused around the new gold showings that we produced last summer at the Eastern and Western Block in the James Bay area. So the IP survey will alert us to the sulfide pathways under the surface of the earth that we're obviously seeing in the new gold showings that we've been getting. It's been come along with associated sulfides. So that IP program will alert us to where those pathways are continuing under the surface. And yeah, exactly as you say, give us some real nice drill targets over the next couple of months to prepare for our inaugural drill program at Golden Giant.
There you have it, Aaron. You've done a great job to give our audience a good overview of the area you are, the work you're doing, and getting ready to get the truth machine, the drill, cranked up soon.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've got our drill rig all booked in and ready to go for around May. So yeah, really looking forward to getting some holes in the ground and hopefully get some results.
Well, thank you very much for being a presenter today, Aaron, and we'll keep in touch, because I think you're going to have a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Thanks very much for spending some time with me today, Alan. Cheers.
The value proposition for QCX Gold is quite spectacular as well. They're sort of a new company that is has a nice tight share structure. They've got 2 key projects in exceptional areas of Quebec for gold and other metals discoveries. And in the not too distant future, they're going to start drilling. And that's really what can make them a much better known company. So take a look at QCX Gold. I think that you'll like what you see in the areas that they are, and keep an eye out for their drilling results that should start rolling in the next couple months. Our next guest is Mike Stark. Mike is the president and CEO of Arizona Silver Exploration. They're focused on silver and gold in Arizona, and they found some really good stuff to date. And so we'll have a chat with Mike. Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here, Alan. Thank you.
Well, things have really come to life recently in the silver market. There's been a new breed of investors organizing on Reddit and Twitter and some of these other websites, and they seem to be very bullish on silver. Let's talk a little bit about silver to start, Mike.
Sure.
What do you think about this recent action?
Well, I'm actually a firm believer. I'm a purchaser of silver, physical silver, not ETFs. I don't believe in the ETFs for various reasons, but I do own physical silver, matter of fact, my last purchase would have been a week ago Saturday, and that was 100-ounce bar. I own a couple of those now. I'm a believer in our project, which also hosts a lot of silver as well. And I think it's supremely depressed right now, and the value is much higher than what we're currently paying.
Yeah, you're even seeing that in as this gang of new investors started organizing online, some of them went to the physical silver dealers, and they basically wiped out the supply. So it's an example of how tight the physical silver market is.
On Saturday, I went to the company that I buy mine from. I'll just leave names out of it, but the company that I went to, there was 14 people in line. I've never seen a lineup there before. And because I had pre-booked the price and pre-booked the allotment, I was kind of brought through the back door and issued the bar. And when I went outside, there was 17 people in line. And it was kind of easy to talk about it. I just said, what's everybody buying? Just a question. Silver, silver, silver. So it was very obvious that this is getting a lot of traction right now, a lot of traction.
What really excites me too is that not only is it difficult to buy physical silver, but you're paying a pretty healthy premium above the spot and futures market price, which I think is real price discovery.
Yes, I agree. My personal one was $5 over spot, and that's in American to Canadian price. So my price was $35 per ounce. I can see it going much higher than that, Alan. My intention is not to sell. That's not what my game plan here is. I'm a long-term holder. I'm a long-term shareholder. These are things that I believe are going to be extremely valuable in the future.
Well, I think the difference between the physical, what you have to pay, the premium you have to pay, and the difference between the spot is pretty indicative of where the price is going.
Exactly. I agree.
Now, something I wanted to talk about is your share structure. A lot of juniors have blown out share structures, and it doesn't really matter what they find because it's going to always make moving higher very difficult. You guys, on the other hand, have a very tight share structure, lots of insider ownership, which I think is indicative of why you have a tight share structure. So delve into that a little bit for us, please.
Well, thanks for that recognition. It means a lot to me. One of the things that we started way back in the early stages was we have to show that we're a believer as well. So you're right, management has participated in every financing. And many a time, now this has happened twice in our lifetime so far, we've been offered more money, but we've restricted from taking it just because of the dilution at the lower price levels. Our last financing was done at 35 cents. and management took 500,000 US of that personal private placement. We did 1.7. We also have a fund involved now, which I'm delighted. This is a very early stage for a fund to be involved in an exploration company, but it showed us good confidence as well. And we're going to do everything to maintain that ownership and hopefully increase it from an institution.
What is your current issued and your also your insider ownership? Because I think that's very instructive for our
Sure.
viewers, investors, because you know when the insiders own a lot of stock, they tend not to want to dilute foolishly because they're shareholders as well. So talk a little bit about that for us.
Glad to. Personally, right now, we own 30%. That's inside management, the 5 directors. If we were to exercise the current warrants that we have that are not in the money, but when they are in the money, that ownership increases to 36%. Our share structure right now is 57 million fully diluted as of April. Now, the reason I say that, we just finished a financing in January, so that will become free trading in April. So technically, as of today, we're 52 million out with 4% ownership in a fund and 30% ownership with management. And then we have a family and friends category. These are close associates, Alan, that I talk to on a regular basis, that I know personally, my cousins, my wife will say, my sons, and that ownership is 42%. So you're absolutely right. This is a very strong, tight ownership. Very little liquidity at times, but it doesn't take the much to move the needle up or move the needle down. In results, they can go up and down very quickly, but I love the recovery that we've been able to see. It doesn't take long and all of a sudden the things gap up again.
And in addition to that January financing, you had a bunch of warrants, I think, exercised. So what price was that at? And what is your cash position as of today?
Good call. We exercised just over $500,000 in warrants. Those were priced at 15 cents. The stock at the time was trading at about 32 cents, and we had 100% cooperation. I phoned the 17 people. There were 17 people involved in these warrants, and I asked each one of them personally if it was going to be an inconvenience. None of them said there would be an inconvenience. They didn't have to sell stock in order to exercise, so we executed that in December. It was 100% fulfilled. And our current treasury right now, it's about 1.8 million in the bank.
Yeah, that's nice of you to be able to contact those people and ask them, because you did what was an early trigger to the
Yes.
financing, so they were happy to do it.
We excelled that. And again, the reason I did it with permission is you don't want to upset your shareholders. And if it would be an inconvenience, then I didn't want to call it that way. Many were prepared to do it, even though we didn't have 100%, but I was looking forward to the 100%, which we accomplished. They're all extremely happy that we've done this.
Excellent. So you're well cashed up, especially for where you are, because the costs are quite low for drilling. Is that correct?
Matter of fact, they just got cheaper. We've entertained a bid now for a core rig, and this gentleman is just received his core license. He's been a driller all his life, but he's now operating his own rig. So we're delighted to have with him on our property here on Philadelphia. He has worked with Greg extensively in the early 80s on another project, and Greg found him one of the best drillers he's ever worked with. So we're delighted to have him. He starts Monday.
Perfect. So now we've got over the silver market and your share structure. What really unlocks shareholder value is drilling. In the past, you guys have drilled veins anywhere from modest grades to high grade gold and silver. You're starting drilling today, I believe. And so let's talk about what's going on with the drilling.
Sure. Each time you drill, you put a piece of the puzzle together. And, you know, in our past results, they've been very successful, anywhere between 5 to 41 grams gold and as modest as 1 or 2 grams silver, up to as high as 97 grams silver. So exceptional underground grades and very high grade 6 foot, 8 foot vein, sometimes over 24 feet wide which is really exciting because that makes things in the future for somebody that develops this very easy to operate underneath there. And we're chasing not one, but two high grade veins. One of them is in the hanging wall. It's a little bit lower grade. And then we have this high grade, which is about 40 feet away, that is showing us a lot of activity with high grade material in it. We believe that with the understanding on the historical drilling and the historical working, this is what they followed. And previously in the early 1900s, they mined 44,000 ounces in just over 150 foot wide area.
Wow. Yeah, it's another thing that I think you could be in store for is some pleasant surprises in these epithermal vein systems. Often the veins don't come to surface, they're blind veins, and you can be drilling for one vein and you accidentally on purpose find another vein. And sometimes those can be fabulously high grade. For example, the Mag Silver epithermal vein in Mexico, it was a blind vein, and now they're $1 billion company, and they've started mining recently. And when they get it into production, they'll be the second lowest cost producer of silver in the world. So that's a situation that happens a lot in these epithermal vein systems. Has your geologist talked to you about that?
Many times over. Greg has a lot of respect for you as well, Alan, but at the same time, he's done this for 43 years. He loves what this area represents. You mentioned location, location, location. We have water, we have easy access. You can see it by the background. That's the roadway into our property. It doesn't get any better. And thanks to some drilling that we did early 2019, we have ample water as well. We have between 30 and 90 gallons a minute in several locations. So all the components for development in the future, power as well as here. But your road access, I mean, it doesn't get any better. We're not helicoptering equipment and personnel in. Our costs go into the ground. That's the best place to put it. It's not overshadowed by other expenses.
Now, I've had a lot of experience with epithermal vein systems, and one of the things you have to deal with is faulting.
Yeah.
Another thing you have to deal with is zonation of grade along strike and at depth. Really what you're looking for is the hot spot relative to the boiling zone of your epithermal vein system. And when you get into that hot spot, that can be about 300 meters of zone in these systems, and often go on for a kilometer, 2 kilometers. So let's talk a little bit about what you're dealing with on the faulting, and also what you're dealing with on the zonation of grade along strike and at depth.
Okay, those are really good questions. First of all, we've explored less than 10% of our current claim status. We have 20 claims, and at this point, we've only zoned in on one area, and that represents less than 10%. We have drilled down on the hanging wall vein down to 650 feet, and we have continuous continuity going down to that depth. However, the grades are lower. So once we found the high grade vein, as you say, sometimes you encounter another vein, the grades are much higher, but now we're going to a depth where we have faulted off, and thanks to some work that's being done by another assistant in our company, she is locating that or in the best ability that she can and giving us guidance to where to drill for that vein lower down. We've just put out the 6 results, and everybody knows this, or sorry, 8 results. And we have improvement on the hanging wall because we drilled it in core. But unfortunately, the 6 holes in RC were hitting the vein and then we lost it. So at depth, we don't know where it is yet, but we will soon find it. We've done this before. Greg has done this before. It's just a little bit of patience. The grades are exceptional, as you well know. However, until we find that, we're stepping out to the west where the known zone was, and where we've hit these high grades at 33 grams and 41 grams before. And we're going to start at surface and work our way down to 250 to 250, 270 feet, and show continuity and extension from 500 feet out to 800 feet out is the next section that we're doing. 12 holes.
Yeah, and people have to really realize that, these epithermal vein systems, they can go for 1,000 meters down, 2,000 meters down. And the drilling you've done so far is close to surface. So you're only a couple 100 meters down. And, for example, again at Mag Silver, their hot zone of that 300 meters that'll make up their depth distance is down around 700 meters. And it's going to be fabulously rich. So you have to be careful about where you are in the system by categorizing it as a lower grade vein.
Yeah.
Simply because you might just be at the very top of that vein, and you can't even compare vein to vein because you could have one that's been pushed upwards, and so you might be relatively, you might be looking at a situation like this. You're higher in the system on one vein, and then one vein has been dropped down or pushed up, and so that hot zone has been pushed up, and you're not at the same relative depth in those veins concerning faulting. So, though that lower grade vein could certainly turn into a high grade vein as you get deeper into that system.
You're so right, Alan. We put an example on our website of the Gold Road mine, which is about 10 miles away from us to the south. They are down over 1,000 feet now on their system. They are encountering some good grades, I understand, but it didn't come easy for them as well. 2.2 million ounces came out of that jurisdiction. So it's a very good hotbed. And we have another mine operating to the south and a little towards Billhead City, and that's called Northern Vertex. They're operating on an open pit heap leach system. Two different ways of operating, one designated for more of a high grade, the other one more of a low grade. But we put some pictures up to give people some illustration of what we are looking at. And literally the Gold Road mine started about 6 feet wide. And it's precarious to look at that. It goes down 1,000 feet. Now, the same thing, they've had faults. It moves and they have to go find it, and then they find it and it goes down again. But it's putting pieces to the puzzle together. We do know that our strike length overall is over 2 miles long. We have basically outcropping shafts down at the south section and some of our south property ownership and their claims, all the way through to the north extension. So we're showing continuous outcropping throughout that entire claim section. We've got a lot of property here. It's going to be very interesting to see this develop, because the bigger it gets, the more enticing it gets for other people.
Yeah, well, I'm not your average sort of market participant, Mike. Because I have a lot of knowledge about exploration. I poke holes in the ground myself for my own company. And I think you guys are onto something special here. These epithermal vein systems can be tricky, but when you know that there's high grade gold and silver in the system, it's a matter of sort of tagging where you have that zone that could be mined. And you guys are still very early in the exploration of your veins. And I also think I'll do a little prediction for you. I think you guys are going to find some blind veins as well. And once you get the zonation of grade pinned down, the faulting pinned down, I think you guys have something very exciting on your hands here.
I'm glad you see that. And we see it as well. I mean, management having this position that we have very strong beliefs that this has got a lot more to see, but a lot more future value for shareholders for sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks a lot for coming on, Mike. And I'll be anxiously watching your new holes go into the ground with your new interpretation and trying to find your veins that have been faulted off and find more of the good stuff.
Thank you very much, Alan. Look forward to the next time we can talk. Thank you.
Okay. The value proposition for Arizona Silver is quite spectacular as well. They've got a nice tight share structure. They've got a really good project. They're adding to that project. They've already made some great hits with the drilling. They're in the early days of that, and they're starting to figure out the gold and silver mineralizing system. And as they do, I think that they'll be able to deliver a lot more of this high-grade gold and silver. and they still have a very modest valuation. So that's the kind of thing that can add up to some very good returns for investors. So I invite you to take a look at Arizona Silver. So now we're going to talk with Matthew Wilson. Matthew's the CEO of Sterling Metals. SAG is their stock symbol. They're a sort of a restructured company coming out of the gate, and they've got some good amount of cash in the bank, and they've got a great project focused on silver. Silver's been exciting of late, so we're going to start. Matthew comes at this business from an investor perspective, having in the past worked with Pine Tree Capital, and and we're going to talk a little bit about silver. So let's start a bit with your background, Matthew. You're coming at this as like my audience, an investor.
Alan, thanks a lot for having me. It's really nice to be here. So yeah, my background, I started about 12 years ago at a firm called Pine Tree Capital. And if anyone was familiar with Pine Tree back in 2009 and 10, Pine Tree owned a number of the junior mining companies that were on the TSXV or in Australia. And most people will think a number is an understatement. And so I worked there for 5-6 years. I come at this from CFA and a Master's of Finance and an investor kind of perspective, having seen a lot of the different projects in the world. And so when we got to see this new asset in Newfoundland, it got me very excited.
So we'll get into that, but let's
Perfect.
get the silver action of late. There's been kind of a, I don't know, a rebirth of retail investor interest in the space due to there was a group of investors that got themselves together on Reddit, and they have been sort of ganging up on some shorts, and I kind of like that action, and it brought some new blood into the silver space, which was greatly needed. And I think that this is a sort of a long-term trend that we're getting some new retail into the business. And what do you think about this recent action, Matthew?
It's certainly been exciting. I think it's if anyone here has been on message boards for the last 10 years, we all know that people get together and we all know we talk stocks and you talk about what's next. I don't think anyone's ever seen kind of the action that maybe the GME took on, but it's great to see the interest in the silver space. I think that the fundamentals of the market are great. I mean, with the green wave coming, I still can't figure out exactly how much silver is needed in every solar panel, but I know it's the best conductor out there. So it's used heavily in solar. It's used heavily in electric vehicles. So you're saying the demand is projected to be double that for the EV market using silver in the next 10 years. So when you kind of couple that with the paper market and the push and the short covering and everything like that, I mean, it's rounding out to be pretty exciting, let alone the fact that silver often will trail or lead or be in some sort of conjunction with gold. And everyone seems to be pretty, the reflation trade that's kind of building and the bullishness of gold. So I think silver is a great place to be because you kind of get to play this reflation trade, you play industrial uses, and then also now this silver short squeeze. It's just kind of made it a perfect trifecta. So it's a cool spot to be in right now.
Yeah, and a couple of the key takeaways for me was that we needed a new audience into the silver space. Some of those old timers are getting a lot grayer than me. And the second thing is it really highlighted how tight the physical market is. On the weekend when that, the building of the community online got into it, they went to the brokers that do online sales of physical gold and basically ate up all the physical supply. And that just shows you how tight the market is. And then you've got these other factors. I mean, sometimes the paper market can govern the price for a short period of time, but over the longer period of time, it's usually about the supply and demand situation. And that little blip of demand basically cleaned out all the online retailers of silver. So talk a little bit about that too for me, Matthew.
You know, it's amazing the stuff you're reading right now about people who are trying to buy silver mint coins and can't get them for less than $40 or can't get them at all. And what was great is when, as soon as the silver short squeeze that started trending, we have a couple shareholders who are big physical silver holders, and a couple of them were messaging me. And these are people that hold physical silver in their basement or hold it in a vault, hold it wherever. But they were messaging me, you know, images of trying to buy more silver, and no one was selling, and it was amazing. And so when I was seeing, you know, online and different message forums the following week that everyone was trying to buy and these places were not selling anymore and things like that, it had started. I'd seen it kind of build from there, and it's a real thing. It's just there is not a lot of physical, and there's just a huge paper market. I don't know if
I think that premium that people are paying is a pretty good indication of where the price of silver is going.
Yeah, I think so. I think I always worry, given its industrial use, the powers that be, so to speak, who need silver to be a lot cheaper than what maybe the physical market is going for, as it's a key component in the industrial space. However, I'm very bullish on silver. I think that at some point, like you said, the supply demand just sort of outweighs everything, and the fundamentals are just there in a very strong way.
Talk a little bit, before we get into the project, talk a little bit about your share structure and your cash position.
So at the end of the year, we raised a $3.75 million deal. We had a couple $100,000 in the bank before that. We are a mining company that was formerly exploring for gold in South America. The company recapitalized this past year, rolled back 10-for-1, and essentially sort of rebranded and restarted itself as Sterling Metals. So if you think of kind of a birthing date, it would be in August, kind of the beginning of August, when the company raised $1.5 million, cleaned up its debt, and restructured to having 30 million shares out. From there, we ended up doing to acquire an asset. We ended up granting 20% of the company to Altius Resources, which we'll get into. But as of right now, there's about $3.5 million of cash. We have 41 million shares out, and we're fully funded for our program this year.
Good. So nice tight share structure, cash in the bank, and I think it's about 45% of the company is held by insiders.
It's about 45 to 50 management, insiders, advisors, sort of thing. There are some legacy holders like Eric Sprott, who owns just under 10%. There's Altius, of course, owns 16%. Management and insiders own another 25 or so. So yeah, it adds up to about 45 to 50. So
you got a nice tight share structure, and to unlock that value, it comes down to the project for the shareholders. So you mentioned Altius. Altius is well known in the business. They're good at finding quality projects to explore. They're a project generator, and you guys got this project from them. Is that correct?
That's correct. In kind of in lockstep with recapitalizing the company, and honestly, by total fluke of timing, we were it worked out very well. But we were able to find this asset. A former colleague of mine from Pine Tree works at Altius, Mark Raguse, who's now is a member of the advisory board, and he was telling me about this silver asset that had been in the company for the last 3-4 years. It's never seen the public realm before. It's never been drilled, but the grades and the scale of the size of the project was very large, and they had up to 2,000 grams silver in trench samples and soils that stretched over 12 kilometers. So I got really excited. Altius has been a great company to work with. We ended up working out a deal such that 19.9% of the company was transferred to them for this asset, and then we have to spend $1.5 million to earn 100% over 3 years, which we plan on doing this year. And then they also take a 2% total royalty as an NSR at the end of the day. So
you guys get 100%?
We'll have 100%, assuming that our drill program goes forward this year. we'll have 100% this year, which is really exciting for us. We think it was a great deal both sides. And what's been really great is that the Altius team has been on this project for 3 years. So the chief geologist of Altius has been our QP. He was managing the project in the fall when we did our own work. And Altius has been in Newfoundland for a long time, and they've just been an ideal partner to help us from everything from actually running the program to finding drill contractors to working on permits. So it's been a really great match, considering also the fact that during COVID, it's very hard to get people from out of province into the province. And so they're already there. So the chief geologist lives a 3-hour drive away, and the team that we had working on it is 20-minute drive. So it's been really fortunate to be in kind of a jurisdiction like this with a team that's actually on the province.
So you mentioned that if you spend the money, there's a pretty good chance you're going to spend the money, because of the money you have, 2.5 million of it is flow through, which needs to be spent this year, correct?
That's correct. So we have $2.5 million that will be spent this year on this single project. Probably about 400 to 500 of it is going to be some more prospecting work, some data gathering. What's really interesting about this project is that there's been 3 years of work done on it, about $1.5 million spent to date. So this data that's been put together, which is 4 different kinds of geophysical surveys, trenching, soil sampling, and a bunch of grab samples, has never really been overlaid and put together to create the best kind of drill targets. So what we're doing right now is working with the guys at Gold Spot Discoveries. They're taking all of the data, putting it together, and going to spit out some really exciting new targets. So we got about $400,000 or $500,000 that we spent on that, and then the balance of it is earmarked for drilling.
Okay, so good amount of cash for drilling, and let's get a little more unpack the project. It's referred to as a district scale project. On that project, you've got widespread silver and other metals in the surface sampling. It's been done by a quality team that knows what they're doing. So let's talk a little bit more about that, the story of the exploration.
Yeah, for sure. So this asset is 13,500 hectares. It's a big project that we're going to own 100%. And from the work that's been done to date, you can trace silver, copper, lead, zinc, antimony mineralization for a 12-kilometer strike length, and it's when you look at it, it's quite linear. It's straight. It's a very definitive trend, and where there's been trenching to date, you've seen grab sample results from trenches, which of course are not indicative of what a drill hole is going to be, but it definitely shows you that something is a robust target. We've seen work that we just did in the fall. We've gotten back 4,500 grams silver, 15% copper, and 15% lead zinc with 5% antimony. And where seemingly people get very excited is because of this size of land package that's open in both directions, in all directions, and the grade, and the kind of the way that the silver, lead, zinc, and antimony carry together. People start to mention, which has been done in our technical report, comparables to districts like Keno Hill or the Coeur d'Alene Silver District in Idaho, where there were multiple high-grade pods running along this 12-kilometer strike or longer. And so what our drill program is going to do in the fall is try and kind of start to understand the geology underneath this massive footprint. It's really exciting project, given the fact that not only do you have grade and district size, but if you're kind of checking the boxes of things that you kind of want to see in a junior project going forward, you also have tremendous infrastructure. You get to drive to the project. There's an airport 2 hours south and power lines everywhere, along with water access. And you're in Newfoundland, a jurisdiction that is not only hot for exploration right now, but has come out publicly and saying they want to have 5 to 10 new mines in the next. You've got a lot of really great things lining up, having this sort of thing, which can be compared to some of the best silver districts in the world, but also in a place that is very accessible, easy to work, and especially during COVID, a place that we can all go.
So that makes for your exploration dollars to go a long way when you have an infrastructure-rich project.
The idea is to get as much into drilling as possible, which is great, especially considering the last project that we were running in this company was in Paraguay, which was almost the direct opposite of this. So this is fantastic, and I mean, add to the project. I think at this point you have to say that the team that is behind it is very adept. We have the advisors that we brought on recently are Kelly Malcolm, who's the VPX of Amex, and Denis Laviolette, who is the CEO of Goldspot and also the president of Newfound Gold. So obviously a lot of great eager minds, and we have all worked together for a while in some way, shape, or form. So that team is really great. And then you have myself as CEO, kind of looks at this as just a really exciting opportunity. And again, you don't find a project that's never been drilled that is this big with these kind of grades too often. So we're really excited to see what we've got here.
Yeah, and it's not sort of a widespread mineralization in a selective sampling. They've done trenching. That goes back to the Altius team. These guys are serious exploration guys, and they don't do the Vancouver Stock Exchange House Street kind of shuffle. They really lay the groundwork down properly.
Yeah, thanks. I think so as well. It was actually a very big part to taking on this project. I looked at a lot of projects around the world and in Canada, and having those guys have done most of the work to establish a proper process to understand kind of just to be able to chat with them about the geology itself made a big difference, because you kind of understand what was going on, understood, look, this is a giant footprint. It's very early, but this is very significant, and the wool's not being pulled over your eyes on this one.
Right. Great work, Matthew. Thank you very much for coming today. You've done a great job to lay out the company, its structure, where you're trying to take it, and best of luck in your upcoming drilling later this or in May, June sometime.
Thanks a lot, Alan. It was really great to be here, and hopefully we were able to put something out that's pretty fun this summer.
The value proposition for Sterling Metals is quite exciting. They're looking for silver in Newfoundland. We talked with a Newfoundland explorer in the earlier interviews. These guys are a new company that's been restructured, and they've got a focus on silver in Newfoundland. They've done a lot of the preparation work, and they're getting ready to start drilling. They still have a tight share structure, and they still have a modest valuation. So take a look at Sterling Metals. Thank you for joining me to discuss advanced gold. My topic that I want to get into is the importance of being in well-established mining camps. All the companies at this show are in well-known mining camps. And why that's so important is because the geology is well known, often the infrastructure is well built, so you have easy access, and that helps keep the cost down. The less you have to understand about the geology, the better off you are, because you're not really reinventing the wheel. In the case of advanced gold is in the center of the most important silver camp in the world. 10% of the silver ever produced worldwide in the history of man has come from the state of Zacatecas, Mexico. In fact, about 150-mile radius from where Advanced Gold's Tabasqueña project is located. For example, I'll tell you how close we are to some great mines. Real de Angeles is about 25 miles to the south, and that was at one time the largest silver mine in the world. As you move a little closer, 12 miles away to the south, is the El Coronel mine. That was a 25-year mine production of gold, open pit, just a fabulous mine. Recently, actually, it's finished mining out their project, but it's an important mine. As you go to the north of Tabasqueña, you've got the city of Zacatecas. The city of Zacatecas has a series of epithermal veins that have been started mining in the 1500s. You go about 30 miles to the north of that, slightly to the northwest, and you run into the town of Fresnillo. Fresnillo has also been in production since the 1500s. It's where Fresnillo PLC, that trades on the London Exchange, has their big mines. And recently, the Mag Silver is putting their mine into production. Now they're partnered up with Fresnillo PLC, but what's interesting about those two companies is they're going to be the 1 and 2 lowest cost producers of silver in the world. That, when you're looking at a bull market for any stock, the mining companies that move the most are the ones that are the lowest cost producers of the metal. What that basically means is they've got the highest margins, they make the most money. Those two sets of mines, Fresnillo PLC and their series of mines, and the Mag Silver joint venture are about 75, 80 miles as the crow flies from the Tabascania mine. Another reason that those mines are so important is in the city of Fresnillo, it was built right on top of a cluster of epithermal veins. That system is sort of what we're finding at our Tabascania project. We've only drilled into the near surface stuff, but we're already finding a cluster of epithermal veins in a corridor that's about 500 meters wide by about 2,000 meters long. And this is what's interesting about what we're doing, is that our veins have only been drilled close to surface. In these epithermal vein systems, they have what's called zonation of grade. And what that means is the deeper you go, often is where you're going to find the highest grade. It's called the boiling zone of an epithermal vein system. Think of it sort of like a boiling pot of water. When you get too far above the water, you've got the bubbles in a boiling pot. As you get deeper, where the water is boiling, that's where the guts of the system are located. And in the case of Mag Silver's mine, the new mine that they're building and in production now, full commercial production this year, 2021, they had to go down about 700 to 1,000 meters, and that's the pocket where what's going to make them a fabulously profitable silver miner. In our case at Tabascania, we've only gone down about 500 meters of vertical depth. So we still have deeper to go because we think that there's a similar epithermal vein system with this zonation of grade at Tabascania. Another interesting thing about Tabascania is about 6,000 meters from the Tabascania headframe is the Milagros mine. And the Milagros silver mine is also epithermal veins and was a very high grade mine. In fact, one of the veins they found is what we call a blind vein. They had these two parallel veins that they were mining, then they built a crosscut to connect them. As they were building that crosscut in the tunnel, they found another vein, and that vein was fabulously high grade. That's only about 6,000 meters from the head frame of our Tabascania mine. So we're in really good country for high grade epithermal vein systems that often host high grade silver and gold. Another interesting aspect of Tabascania is that it looks like we have a sulfide system on the northern portion of the property. The epithermal veins that we've found so far are in the central part of the project. But to the north, we have this long, 3,000 meter long induced polarization, high chargeability anomaly. And what that's good for helping to find is sulfide systems. And we've drilled a couple holes into the northern portion of the project. And in that northern portion of the project, we've found some 1 to 2 meter wide sulfide zones. And this is those are volcanogenic massive sulfide systems. They come up from old volcanoes, and that helps bring the mineralization that then forms in pockets, and that's what we're looking for. But we know that we have sulfides. We know that we have high grades in those sulfides. So now we're going to try and target better the pockets deeper, where we can find a chamber with lots of massive sulfides. And so what we're doing to do that is, in our previous geophysics, we had quite wide line spacing between the probes that do the downhole or the depth geophysics, about 100 meters between probes, and the device that we used was not as powerful as some of them, the newer models are. So what we're going to go in there and do is do 25-meter line spacing and use a much more powerful device. What that'll give us is better resolution as you go deeper and help us to find where massive sulfides can have formed into much larger deposits than what we found so far. So we're kind of a two-target company, and why that sulfides are so important is around 10 miles to the west of us is the San Nicolas mine. Sorry, to the east of us is the San Nicolas mine. San Nicolas is owned by Teck, and it's a big, massive sulfide deposit. So we know that those kind of deposits are around us. So in the northern part of the project, we have our massive sulfide target. In the central part of the project, we have our epithermal vein system. Right now, we're drilling on the epithermal vein system, and the target is to drill. One of our holes hit high-grade gold and silver mineralization, and it was number 2, and we're drilling to go underneath that, and then to the east of that is a series of these veins that had widespread gold and silver mineralization. We want to go underneath all of those veins to get down into that deeper portion of the system of these well-known epithermal vein systems in the most important silver camp in the world. So we're in a very good position. We're in a great location, which again is not just important for Advanced Gold, it's also important for the other companies, but this is the #1 silver capital of the world. We're right in the heart of it. We're finding the same kind of veins as make up all the mines around here, and we're on getting deeper into the system. So stay tuned for those upcoming drills, and we'll have a lot more to talk about in future shows. Thank you very much for joining me today. Check out our website at advancedgold.ca. Our stock symbol is AAX on the Venture Exchange, and I invite you to check out all our news releases, check out our website, check out the corporate presentation, and I think you'll find a lot of why I'm so excited about what we're doing. So there you have it, folks. It's our first ever Rocks and Stocks news online conference. I hope you found it informative. I hope you found it different than a lot of the other online conferences, in that we tried to be aware that we're talking to investors, geologists, mining executives, talking to investors. We've tried to provide you with some great info that will help you as an investor in general. We've tried to present to you what is how the companies are going to go about unlocking shareholder value, and I've also given you the value proposition for these companies. As always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to do your homework and speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. And the biggest part of that is do your homework. Check out these companies, go to their websites, watch their corporate presentations, read their news releases, follow their developments as they come out. And I think this will help you to find some great opportunities as an investor. Have a great day and stay tuned for our upcoming shows.